Namaste and welcome back to another episode of The Sapient. Today we have yet another guest, Mr. Anthony. Welcome, Anthony.
Hello, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well today in a bit of a frenzy because despite being alive for 26 years, I don't know how time zones work. So this is a little delayed from when we originally intended to start. But otherwise, I am very good.
Got it. And just before we started recording the podcast, you mentioned that um, you are an author,
Yes.
and I am always like of authors because I don't understand how writing works, like a chimp brain, chimp monkey brain. So, could you explain like how did you like start writing your books initially?
Uh, I guess the best way to talk about writing my books initially is that I originally wanted to be a comedy writer for adult animations. I
Hmm.
saw the end credits that said writers, and I very much enjoyed various, pieces of adult animation, be it Family Guy, Futurama, South Park, and I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, that's something I could do. And I kind of realized over time that wasn't my style necessarily. And
Hmm.
so, since I've shifted a lot more into poetry, creative nonfiction, and fiction, and philosophical writing, and uh, to make a long story short, I now am a MFA creative writing student at Oklahoma State and also an instructor at that university.
Hmm. Got it. So you said that you wanted to, like be a comic writer, right? Like
Hmm.
just offend people on daily basis.
Hmm.
Um, like, do you think that that's kind of a bug in humans forever? Just to talk about the non-talkables.
I see what you're saying. I mean, as someone who studies uh, philosophy, there's a reputation around philosophy that it lacks any sense of humor.
Hmm.
But if you pick up a work of enough works, I should say, of Nietzsche, that would be like a really good example of humor. Or I forget the author's name, but on Bullshit is a really good example of humor in philosophy.
Hmm.
So I think one of the things that is good about comedy. There was an expression from Nietzsche that Christianity is just Platonism for the masses. In the same way, comedy can be philosophy for the masses. I mean, if you look at the stand-up specials of someone like George Carlin, this is a really good example of sort of deeper, foundational, untouchable, untalkable ideas. Uh, that philosophy tries to touch upon, done through humor in a more accessible and I would say arguably sometimes a better way than most philosophers express.
Definitely, because I'm not an author at all. Like I don't even know how to write. Let's say.
Hmm.
um, but I've always been interested in comics who write like edgy kind of stuff, just because let's say in just like 3 minutes of conversations you offended a bunch of people
Yes.
by giving out a statement, right? And many people would say that's like out of bounds, right?
Yeah.
And there are still people, like I don't want to name, but there are people who will get offended on anything and everything.
Yeah.
And what's your take on those people, like who just get offended on everything?
Um, well, the thing is that I do want to make a clarification beforehand. I think there's an over stereotyping of people who get offended by everything. And I think in many cases, this is just an over offense in the opposite direction at offense. I know this might sound kind of crazy, but oftentimes when people get offended on matters, they are pointing to very serious matters, be it colonialism, be it racism, sexism, etc. And so the things that people are most often offended about do have a tone of seriousness, and I think it's perfectly okay for people to be offended in many regards. Now, if we're talking about a person who is literally offended by everything, that just doesn't exist. That's not someone who can make it through life. Now, I do see the issue of like straddling sensibilities, right? When the argument between one's offense and one's ability to speak, right? This is a hard line to straddle. I actually am, for the most part, happy with how the United States deals with this legally. Currently, right now in Australia, tech companies can be held for liable for what their users say on their platforms. At least that's the law that's being worked through. I'm not sure if I like that system. We'll see how it goes, and maybe I'm proven wrong. But I think for the most
Mm-hmm.
part, um, we should at once be sensitive to the sensitivities of others while
Mm-hmm.
also you know keeping our legal rights to free speech, because in the same vein, you don't want to shut that down either, because shutting down the free speech can lead to some interestingly bad potential slippery slopes. Whereas if we are an unsensitive society or an insensitive society, we open ourselves to marginalizing and really hurting individuals who don't have as powerful of a voice. And if we make certain topics socially acceptable, we really undermine certain people. And uh, a consequence of this is currently happening in a state like my own home state of Florida. The increased rhetoric against individuals of the LGBTQ plus LG. Sorry, I got all the forgot all the letters, but especially the gay and trans community, I should say. The
Mm-hmm.
rhetoric that's been increased against them has created huge social consequences. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
tough line.
Got it. And coming to the Australian government, I don't think they have heard of like 4chan. I
No,
mean,
they have
if
not.
yeah, if they spent like 10 minutes on 4chan, they'll be like, yeah, this act is not going to work at all. Um,
Yeah.
it's kind of funny that you point that out, because do you remember when Facebook, especially Mark Zuckerberg, like was on trial in front of Congress many
Hmm.
years ago,
Yes.
and like that was like legitimately funny and sad at the same time. Um, because I still remember a senator asked like, how does my iPhone know my location? And like Zuckerberg is literally a robot. Like he will not show any emotions on face, right?
Right.
And even he was like, the fuck are you talking like?
Well,
Like,
there is that issue
yeah.
of like of politicians being older globally, which there's a sensibility to that, especially past sensibility,
Hmm.
right? You want individuals with experience and know-how of systems to be, politician is a legitimate job as much as we kind of, as a global community, trounce on it. But yeah, the issue with also being older is that just digital literacy is just garbage.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like they're so out of touch that they don't know like what they're talking about. And like the thing that you just said about Australia, right? Like it comes to the same point. Like you cannot centralize internet. Like governments have tried that and failed spectacularly before in centralizing internet. And have you heard this new thing that Facebook will start charging people in Europe now, because of the ads policies?
Uh, oh, I did not know about that. I mean, I was going to transition to China's failure of censorship, but this is interesting. No, I haven't heard of Europe's Facebook
Hmm.
ad charging policy.
So it turns out that European Union said that you cannot like service personalized ads. Like you cannot collect my data
Right,
um, and okay, full declaration, I am a digital marketer, so
right,
I work with these things every day. And so essentially European Union said that you cannot serve personalized ads to people. So
right,
Facebook was like, okay, then there is no like literally no reason for me to exist apart from just pay to like pay to use basis.
right.
And now that's the direction that Facebook is going, and pretty soon I think Instagram also will flow in that particular
Yeah, in the
direction.
European Union. I mean, I
Yeah.
think I can understand. I mean, maybe this might be me missing out on stuff somewhere, but I'm actually very okay with this because one, I there's enough advertising in cultures that have access to these technologies more so, and even uh, cultures in countries where the access is less so. I mean, I believe I don't remember what parts of the African continent, but in many parts of Africa, uh, Facebook is synonymous with the internet there, right? Like in the same
Yes.
way for many people, like Google synonymous with the internet in the
Yeah.
West. Um, and I'm okay with not being like the targeting of certain ads towards individuals and the invasion of privacies and the pushes of data. I mean, I understand that's not necessarily what digital marketers are trying to do, but the feeling of privacy, which is all privacy really comes down to, because privacy can always be linked with some other law or some other underlying issue. So these violations of privacy and these sort of uh, marketing culture and consumerist culture, I think I'm perfectly fine with these things going away. And if individuals want to pay to keep up their Facebook because it's a useful service to them, whether they're using Facebook Marketplace or whether they're using it to remember their grandmother's birthday, I mean, it's fine for have paid services. There's plenty of things that are paid
Hmm.
services that don't need to run for free. I mean, it'd be nice in many ways that Netflix is for free, but the fact that that's not a free model is also fine in many ways.
Yeah. um so in terms of digital, there's a saying that privacy is a myth.
Hmm.
Like that's just like consideration of a person. It's like cat drinking milk, closing its eyes. Like it's thinking that nobody's watching me, but when literally the whole freaking world is watching the cat drink the milk. So I think privacy is so similar to that in today's world.
Yeah, but I think the issue with that is like, yes, I'm with you. In terms of access, everyone has access to your information as soon as you put yourself on the digital space, and we've all consented to, well, not all, but anyone who's been on the internet has consented to their data, their information being known to the global network. But
Hmm.
when I guess I talk about privacy, because I think that's the issue, like privacy isn't like absolute, like nobody has access to me at all. Privacy are those things that you're willing to have out, or the feeling that something you don't want out is out. So a good example of this is um, when someone looks at your diary, let's say, right? Like, let's just say you have a diary, and let's just say I have a diary, right? And someone grabs it and reads through it. Like, yeah, that's an invasion of privacy, but that's also an invasion of like your personal property. So, in the same way, privacy always has a secondary uh, principle attached to it, right? There's no such thing as privacy alone in a vacuum. Um, there's privacy with property rights. There's privacy with basically assault. There's privacy with like theft, and we can go on.
Yes, I think it's what you're referring to is like privacy in a degree, like in terms of in certain parts it could be applied.
Mm.
Yeah, like so coming back to this internet thing and just privacy and all these things. um, in India there is a law right now that says, let's say you are using Facebook on a daily basis,
Hmm.
you could ask Facebook to give the data that they have collected on you
Yeah,
in the whole history. So they will send you over the data that they have collected from day one to till date,
yeah,
and they're legally like required to do that now.
yeah.
So do you think that's something that other nations should also start doing?
The In terms of all the nations, I mean, I I think how do I want to put this? Because again, I'm not an expert on digital law by any sort of means, but from a personal opinion in regards to the amount of data collection that private entities are allowed to have, the only peoples it really benefits ultimately are large corporations. People talk about the consumer benefits, but really the only thing it helps consumers with is splurge purchases, which really just grants more power to these, corporations. I try with my partner to buy on like very much a need sort of basis, right? We very rarely, the things we splurge on are sort of travel and food. We love food, so those two things are kind of our splurges. But outside of that, it's very much like, okay, what do we need? What are we looking for? What are we setting up for? Right? We already have in mind what we're going for, and this push of digital marketing through internet data. The main thing that it does is get users to buy uh, consumer products that they otherwise would not have bought, because on a beforehand basis, right, before we had like the shopping mall, right? Like that was our first kind of introduction really into like kind of splurge and extra spending. Historically, all of our purchases for the most part were based off of need or luxury. It would still be need based. It would just be a luxury version of that. And as with the growth of the shopping mall, and then with the extra boom of the internet data collection, just splurge buying just took off to just an untenable degree, especially if we're trying to combat issues globally, such as climate change, for example.
Yeah. And unfortunately, like in today's world, everybody has something to sell.
Hmm.
uh, and that's kind of like a shit situation, I feel like, because everybody is trying to sell everybody
Yep.
something. And businesses go through this life cycle where either they make it or they don't.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, those businesses who don't make it are in a very high number.
Oh yeah.
And that is so similar to every other field that, of course, like acting, writing,
Yeah.
singing, whatever it is. So yeah, like that's a kind of downside of today's digital world.
And
So you
I'm not,
yeah,
oh, sorry. Before, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm not a complete hater of the internet. I just want to be very open to its downsides.
it's okay, you can be like a total hater. That's
No,
not
no,
a
no, because I just
problem.
want to be honest.
Yeah. That's not an issue. So you were saying something about China
Yes.
earlier.
Yeah. I just basically, going back before about like how online censorship inevitably fails. That even China, whose internet is so centralized onto WeChat, even then and there, there's still individuals who come up with code and coded language and ways to talk about issues at hand, and pointing to particular items, right? Like China has a much more centralized internet system than the West, and that seems surprising because there's so few dominant websites in the West. We could really boil it down to the products of Meta, be it Facebook, be it Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, um, you know, um,
Google,
Google,
Microsoft.
yeah, Google, and a couple of Microsoft things like Outlook and
Hmm.
Bing and whatnot. And obviously we can Steam for video games, really, right? Like there are some very centralized aspects, but obviously China's internet is much more centralized between WeChat, Alibaba, and who am I missing? There's a third website that's very large, but I am
Hmm.
blanking on that at the moment. So even with the centralization of China's internet, even as the government has created legally an environment that only allows for a few uh, particular websites to even begin with, and WeChat being, Facebook on steroids, succeeding in all the things that Facebook wanted to do. Facebook wanted to be the one website in the West, and that failed, but WeChat succeeded at
Hmm.
doing that. Even then,
Yeah.
China can't fully censor that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you look at like TikTok, like, and the version that is served to Chinese people rather than other countries people,
Hmm.
that's like a crazy difference. That I saw a video on YouTube where a guy from China like was using TikTok, and his son is like under 14 or something,
Hmm.
and all he was getting is like literal like propaganda. um, and similarly, the same person used VPN and registered a new account in United States
Yeah.
as the same like 13 or 14-year old, and all he was looking at was like twerking and dances and just like shit content.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was like a real demonstration that he did in front of everybody. And for people to say, what, like we are free enough that a child can see a woman working on TikTok when he's 12 or 13 years old is freedom. That kind of takes scary path, because you see, like, I don't care whether anybody agrees or not, but TikTok is a social, like, society. It wants to like destruct the societal like norms and forms that already exist. So it's like, you know um let's say family values or whatever you want to call it as, just people being people, and they want to completely like kind of take that over.
I don't know if necessarily TikTok is any sort of force of destruction or like, norms or anything like that. I think it's just following trends, right? And I think kind of the norms that people point to when TikTok's like, oh, they're like TikTok's destroying norms and trends or whatever. Like, no, they are a product of current trends, right? TikTok is based upon like youth popularity because obviously younger people are watching it, so they are showing the things that younger individuals are into, and younger individuals are into things from the wave of the sexual revolution, right? If we're going to really point to anything that really took out our norms and trends as a Western society, at least for us, and but globally too, is the fortunate, in my eyes, invention of birth control, right? Like this um, changed norms and customs to such a large degree, and it just so happened to coincide with philosophical revolutions of postmodernity, and it just so happened to coincide um, with the very kind of like beginnings of the mass consumer digital revolution, right? Like these sorts of things where it's like these mass media products were becoming more available. Yes, starting in the 50s, but they really start to get rolling in the 60s. You have the sexual revolution with birth control, and a philosophical revolution at the same time with postmodernity. And TikTok is just kind of showing these sorts of things kind of together. It just is a new media outlet that portrays trends that have been happening since the 1960s.
Hmm. So it's like this, right, Anthony? Like,
Mhm.
you see, if you look at Instagram, if you look at Facebook, if you look at YouTube, right, all
Mhm.
of them have short content. But the way TikTok works is absolutely hideous. Like, for example, in India, TikTok has been banned since 2019. Like, we
Right.
cannot use TikTok here. And but me working in digital media, I had to understand how TikTok works too. And their algorithm is absolutely like hideous. Like, if ever TikTok came under scrutiny in terms of what they're collecting and how they're manipulating people, um, it would not exist as an app.
I, this isn't me pointing to, however, TikTok being a good thing or having a good algorithm. That's not what I'm saying. It's that for these tools, like for these algorithms to work and be so effective, and for TikTok to have more watch time than YouTube, a long form video service, clearly they are pointing and showing to trends that have already been occurring. Now, while I do think uh, the sexual revolution is a actually a positive no holds bar, I do think there are downsides to the rollout of large mass media and negatives towards postmodernity. Even though I have a more positive light of postmodernity than I do mass media, um, nonetheless, TikTok's success is not the fact that it necessarily breaks down people or destroys norms. Those seeds have already been planted. um, TikTok in many ways could potentially be sort of a gardener to these sorts of seeds that have been planted, and I think in many ways is pointing to it grows some good gardens, it grows some bad gardens, just like everything else. I think TikTok's been an overall good for um, the LGBTQ plus community. Um, so I think that's been a huge positive for that community because it's allowed them to talk and communicate and get across terms and understandings and see representations of themselves in positive lights. However, I think it's been a negative in regards to how we talk and how we communicate. It's, it's one of these things where it's contributed to the destruction of attention spans, and it's turned every form of art into content, and we can go on. But so I am with you in many large capacities. TikTok is a negative. I'm not here to sing the praises of TikTok by any means. I don't have the app myself, and
Mm-hmm.
I can understand why governments are against it. I mean, even the state of Oklahoma that I live in, I can't
Mm-hmm.
use TikTok on my campus. I mean, nor would I because I don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like TikTok is banned from all public government
Mm-hmm.
centers in the state of Oklahoma.
That's kind of great move, if you ask me,
Right.
because I have seen the bad sides of TikTok, and I absolutely like don't want anyone to suffer from that. Um, yeah, because just China in general sucks. Yeah.
That's that's
Um,
that's one thing that's what's that meme where it's like it's and I think it's from that arm wrestling movie that Arnold Schwarzenegger was him. It's like the two arms coming together,
yeah.
and it's like India, the United States, and they come together, hate on
Yeah,
China.
yeah, 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 exactly.
Yeah,
Because yeah, if you want to talk international relations kind of thing, India and China is like, we are only here to like trade with you and nothing else. Like,
yeah.
I don't want to be a friend. I don't want to be a acquaintance. Nothing. It just is a pure
There was
transaction.
a there was a border dispute a couple of years ago, even I mean it's still going on with um not Kurdistan. Oh my God, what's that? Oh my God, what's that disputed region? Um, oh my God, I'm thinking of it. It's like at the very north, and it's disputed between China, India, and Pakistan.
Hmm.
Um, oh my God, it's in the way north. But anyways, like there was a couple of years ago where there was Indian soldiers and Chinese soldiers having a kind of
Yeah,
a backlash.
hand
They
to
were
hand
yeah, hand to hand
clash.
throwing rocks
Hmm.
and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's
that is kind of thing now because, um, so what happened was, like there is a crucial point, a mountain.
yeah,
So if you can, like, let's say, establish on the top of that mountain, you have literal like 270-degree view.
yeah.
And that's actually Indian border, and Chinese were like, like, would you mind if we take this piece of land from you?
Yeah, you mind if we just hang out here, dog?
Yeah, yeah. And when they were caught, they were like, oh, sorry, like, we did not know this was yours, and we just thought it was like international borders, and we're just going through that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that was like the kind of like shit scene that went on.
Well,
But right now, India China is not that much like love hate relationship,
yeah.
because we got this BRICS coming up. Have you heard of it?
Yes, yeah. It's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and I believe South Africa.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And now we got Iran, Saudi Arabia, and bunch of other countries, Egypt, and some other countries too.
That's it. They're gonna have to expand that adjective. It can't be bricks
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. No, actually, the thing is, the BRICS are like the permanent members,
Okay.
and everybody else has like seat in the association.
Right. That makes sense. It's like
Yeah. So right
it's like
now,
a G7. Yeah, that's the best comparison. It's
oh
like
yeah, exactly,
it's like the
exactly. It's
G7
like
but with
G7.
extra steps and more secondary members.
Yeah, it's like G7 with like 60 countries.
Yeah, it's like we'll show you G7. We'll be just barely more of an economy than you because we have
Yeah.
half the world. Right. I mean, it's
So.
literally those seven countries in the G7 still make up like just by themselves. Those seven countries are just so economically powerful. It's insane,
Hmm.
and that's
Yeah.
not including India and China, which is insane because these are
Yes.
two. It just show any, and obviously most of that weight is carried by the United States,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, yeah,
which is
definitely.
insane. Just how much.
And here is something that pisses me off every time I look at it. Like, if you really think about it, Europe is just like piggy banking out of United States success.
Oh, the
Like
Marshall
that's
Plan
all.
is, I mean, the United States after World War II, we basically funded Europe to the
Hmm.
point where it could
Yeah.
retain its high economic socio-cultural status. And we
Hmm.
became, for a large time, that's kind of fading away now, but for a large time, we were Western Europe's military.
Yeah, and that's the reason like I love Trump, because he said if you have like security issues, build your own fucking army. Like don't ask us money to build it.
I mean,
And I went like like that's like the most balanced approach to it. Like of course you are my friend, but I cannot like keep protecting you forever. You need to protect on your own.
yeah, I mean, that was the one thing. There's many things I disliked about the former president, to say the least.
Same
I
here.
Yeah, many things, but that was one I think issue he was right about. It
Mm-hmm.
made sense to me. I mean, obviously, I think ultimately his legacy is very bad and horrible for global
Mm-hmm.
republics. Given his stances at the end of not before the election even happened, saying it was rigged and not buying into real results, and then all his, coup, and then of course all his sort of Islamophobia and his racist, and I mean, we could go on and on, but I think turning this podcast into another Trump bashing session, while it
Mm-hmm.
would be accurate, uh, is been done so many times.
Yeah.
But
Here is something that I don't like. I'm not a Trump supporter,
right.
and to my audience, I don't have a green card. Like I can't vote, so like don't take my word seriously, because this is just an Indian's point of view. You know how like people talk about Obama saying like he was the great president of 20th century and blah
Hmm.
blah blah. Yet we saw so much destruction and war in his time,
Hmm.
and people expected like Trump to fucking drop nukes on South
And he
Korea, North
didn't.
Korea, Japan, like just name drop it, keep just fucking keep launching missiles. But he established like a lot of peace in even in Middle East,
Yeah, yeah,
and also
between
in Southeast
Israel
Asia.
and Saudi Arabia. Again, like that
Yeah.
was another thing that I thought. I was surprised that uh his uh cabinet wasn't the one to pull out of Afghanistan, but
Hmm.
at the end of the day, and then it was very strange that he critiqued Joe Biden for pulling that move, because it would have been very consistent with his own policies. And so I think these last two um, presidential administrations have been much better in regards to um, their stance on war and conflict. So that's
Hmm.
something I'm very happy about, because I think as someone who went to the University of Central Florida and seeing like how integrated Lockheed Martin was with that university, and seeing how
Hmm.
unfortunately
Hmm.
ingrained uh, you know, the militaristic, not even just life, but attitude. I mean, I saw a guy
Hmm.
driving down the street in a Humvee the other day. This is just on like a random road in Tulsa next to a Brahms, and this man's just driving a Humvee, like just past the ice
Yeah.
cream shop. It's like just some guy, just some
Yeah.
middle-aged guy with a Humvee.
Just an average Joe.
Just Joe with his Humvee, just stopping at
Yeah.
the stoplight. It's like, so
Hmm.
no, like it's more so like one of the things I think the world looks to in Americans is like the industrial complex is tied into the country. Like, yeah, of course. I mean, our police are some of the most militarized. We have the largest military. A lot of people work for companies like Lockheed Martin and gun. Like, yes, that's big, but even bigger is that militaristic attitude. The number of people have like Punisher stickers on their car. The number of people driving like big trucks, and almost just like these the militaristic attitude is bigger. I mean, how much reverence, even though we don't do it financially or through the VA or anything, but how much like
Hmm.
social reverence we give the soldiers and veterans. I think that's um, a fascinating and overlooked aspect of America's
Yeah.
military culture.
Because you brought up a machine manufacturing company, let me say.
Hmm. Yeah, we'll call it that.
Yeah, let's say that. I really got pissed off recently because I was just going through news, and like a thing about me is when I look at a news, and I try to come up with like funny scenario for that, like why did that particular scenario happen, right?
Hmm.
And there was this one congressman who said, we know that extraterrestrial life exists, and like they have visited planet earth, and they know that we are here, but we don't want to give that information to everybody because general people are just fucking dumb.
Right.
And I was like, how fucking dare you, like you come from the same floor of congressmen who asked Mark Zuckerberg how the fuck does iPhone know my location, and you are talking about people being dumb.
Yeah.
um
Well,
because right now if you look at it, like there is even a congressional hearing that's coming up
yeah.
where it's going to be like completely open. Of course it's not open because um, these machine manufacturing companies are against it,
Yeah.
because it's just like technology transfer, and they don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
So that kind of like works me up every time I listen to that. I'm like, so you are saying that just the general public doesn't have any sort of like reality or rationality? You are saying, they're absolute fucking savages, like they should not be given this information.
Yeah, one of the things I think that plagues individuals is often elitism, right? Like people can find elitism in all sorts of regards. So, it's not just to Congress. I mean, people can even find elitism when it comes to their sports. I mean, I'm sure.
Authors.
Oh, I was gonna say, is that like I don't know the IPL teams very well, but I'm sure
Hmm.
there's people who have like who have IPL elitism where it's just like, oh, but like our club is like more and just insert X sort of thing, right? Or people like a
Hmm.
good
Yeah, 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 that exists.
yeah. I mean, I don't the best example I have is with the Yankees, right? Like in the United States, New
Hmm.
York Yankees fans,
Yeah.
they're like elitists, they're like baseball elitists, and it's just like why,
Hmm.
like
Yes,
it,
yes.
it's like it's a game where people buy like
Hmm.
cheap corn dogs, and you
Yeah.
just see grown men take way too long to
Hmm.
hit a ball with a piece of wood. Like what it like
Yeah.
cool. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's a tendency for everyone, but I think one of the things that I find most interesting about this sort of stuff to me, um, let's say we have been visited by extraterrestrials, right? Let's just say that that has already been the case. That's pretty good, and this might sound strange saying it, but it's good in the sense that if extraterrestrials have come and we're still kind of chilling, that means that there's a higher likeliness of some exterior force being either peaceful or not having focused in on militaristic technology like our species has. So, yeah, I think and I think ultimately, if let's say extraterrestrial courses are come and they're just hanging out, right? There's also a high likeliness if there's frequent trips or not. Which again, I'm skeptical of all this, so I don't not a believer. But one of the things that is likely is that it could be for tourism, right? Like kind of secret tourism where they're like, oh, they're coming over, like, ooh, what are these pretty rock formations? Or oh, cool, let's put on disguise and just like hang out in this like weird human city. Um, and I think there's one manga a roommate told me about where the whole premise of the manga is about aliens coming for sex tourism, in the same way people go to like Amsterdam. So
Hmm.
so I would hope that this floor of Congress
Hmm.
they talk about the extraterrestrial sex tourism as opposed
So
to
he,
anything else.
here is what they said, right? They said
Hmm.
that if we let people know that everything that we know about extraterrestrials, sorry,
Hmm.
people would just stop living their lives. That, i.e., big air quotes, they just want you to be like a modern slave. Like, just go to office, don't think much about everything. Just keep paying your taxes, dude. Like, don't panic. keep investing in your IRA, like,
Yeah,
and keep supporting our government, please, because we need to spend money on Ukraine and other things that we want to propagate so that we can stay in power.
but that's the
So
thing. If
he said something called as, he used a word. He said strategic surprise.
Mhm,
That is, we will expose the public, the general public,
mhm.
to these facts slowly.
I mean, it's one of those things. Also, it's let's. I mean, how do I want to put it? If it was so shattering, right? Like, and if it was like such a priority, let's just say, assuming all this is true, right? Like, it can't be such a big deal to the point where, like, where governments would have like no other, would have no other focus, right? Like, I mean, obviously there should always be secondary focuses, but like, you would think that if these things were such a big deal that people would kind of like hone in and work things out, or maybe it's just me being overly optimistic in that regard and thinking that, oh, if there was powerful and blatant enough issues, we wouldn't have secondary focuses, at least, or I should say large scale secondary focuses. But I don't know, at this moment, I mean, I am kind of neutral on whether we've been visited or not. And for me, I don't think my life would shatter too much because I already hold the assumption, just given probability, that there are other intelligent beings somewhere in the universe.
Hmm. But would you say that, let's say, me withholding information from you, thinking you are a, like a buffoon, do you think that that's like a warranted move from a
No, I
democratically elected freaking government?
oh, definitely not. I mean, I'm a let know and type person. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's my sort of personal basis. But so to me, it's not a valid move. But unfortunately, there's nothing I can personally do about it. I can't dictate what other people are going to say. Right? I'm not going to run into
Yeah.
that open meeting, get myself on C-SPAN, and hold a sign that says "Tell us about the aliens." That's not going to go very well. I mean, as funny
Hmm.
as that would
Yeah.
be, it's not going to go
Yeah.
very well.
I mean, you should hold a sign saying increased tax rates
No, no, no,
for
no.
poor people.
Okay. I see what you're
That
saying.
was a twist.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm like, what's happening here? But yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things. Yeah, it's interesting where people focus themselves, upon. But again, like, one of the other things that I think also happens, right? And this is in regards to extraterrestrial news. It's one of those things where a lot of people who do talk about this subject that could have a lot of seriousness to it,
Hmm.
um, often aren't. So, kind of the
Hmm.
whole subject or understanding or study of something gets kind of immediately discredited. I went on a another show to talk about um, speculative extraterrestrial religions,
Hmm.
and the person I was talking with was like, "You hear that, my star children? Like, this will tell us about your origins." And I'm just like, "Oh shoot, did I end up on a Scientology podcast? Like, oh no, oh
Yeah.
no." So
Now you're an involuntary member of a cult.
yeah, exactly. But truly, because I'm like, I just want to like,
Yeah.
I've done religious studies work. Like, that was what I did before um, literary sort of
Hmm.
teaching. I assisted in a world religions class, so I've done religious scholarship. So I'm like, hey, if like, like, if we're serious about extraterrestrials, like, we should have some study and understanding of the things they may believe, and let's
Hmm.
speculate on this as accurately as we possibly can, right? And so
Hmm.
that's one of the things you hear about in the speculation. There's there we're getting better, like with stuff like Arrival, which speculates on extraterrestrial linguistics. There's a lot of study on there's some works on extraterrestrial sociology and stuff like that, and like,
Hmm.
but you would think this stuff would be leaned into and talked about more by these communities, but instead it's a lot of more like, oh, they built the pyramids. It's like, no, they fucking didn't. Like,
Hmm.
no, they didn't. We know how the pyramids were built. Or it's like,
Hmm.
oh, like, they were the Atlanteans. It's like, no, they weren't. Atlantis was just a metaphor
But
by
Anthony,
Plato.
do you really think pyramid was built by us?
Yeah, 100%. I have no that one. I am. I mean, I can't 100% prove it, but
Hmm.
I'm like about as like much as I can prove anything. Yeah, like, I have no doubts about the pyramids were built by
Because
ancient people.
recently I was listening to a pyramid expert
Hmm.
who worked on pyramids like 30 plus years.
Hmm.
He was saying that the narration that people think that pyramids are like tombs,
Hmm.
that's just like bullshit. Like, there has been only one mummy that has been ever found in pyramids, but pyramids
Yeah.
for
Yeah, there
were
should be
for
only
other
one mummy.
purposes.
Yeah, exactly. There should only be one mummy.
Yeah, no, he's saying in all of the pyramids
Hmm.
found throughout the world, there was only one place where mummies were found.
Yeah, correct.
And
Yeah, that should that
he's
should
saying that the narration of pyramid just being a tomb is like minimalistic, like you're boiling everything down. But he says that pyramids have a higher purpose that we don't understand.
No, 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 no. So,
um
so what I'm trying to say is this, right? So globally, let's talk globally, right? Like the way the Mayans used their pyramids, for example, was for rituals and as a calendar. The way other cultures used their pyramids were for more ceremonial purposes. Um, However, the Egyptian pyramids, especially the pyramid at Giza, right? We do have. There's actually multiple pyramids. I believe there's ones
yeah.
more to the south um, that have evidence of mummies in them. But the
Yes.
pyramids of Giza, just focusing on the big ones, right? They were built for one pharaoh as one pharaoh's tomb, all of them. So, of course, there should only be one mummy. Right. Now, obviously, it would be the case that they wouldn't build this elaborate system for a singular purpose. Of course, there were ritualistic purposes. Of course, maybe there is even use of them for like secondary purposes later on. Like, obviously, of course. And again, most of the Egyptian mummies, we know have been robbed. I mean, if we look at the, oh my God, what is it? The Valley of the Kings, I believe it's called, where way more pharaohs were buried than any sort of pyramid, right? Like very few of those remain because, of course, like over time, which how old Egyptian civilization is, you know, those pyramids got robbed, those tombs got robbed. I mean, the only tombs we really have left are the ones of minor pharaohs such as Tutankhamun, who was not really significant in the grand scheme of Egyptian history. So yeah, I get the public perception being way too minimalized about how pyramids are understood, and that expert is completely right that this is a small understanding of what pyramids were, but it's not to
Yeah.
ignore that this is the the case scenario we have, the best
Mhm.
archaeological evidence that we have.
So yeah, that expert was saying that like there are like roots within the pyramids
Hmm.
where they do not understand like why that exists
Correct.
or the purpose of it. But
Right.
because here is what I always wonder. They estimated the pyramid's height using
Hmm.
laser technology. And laser is not like freaking old, like it's not like ancient.
Right.
And if you look at any pyramid, it's not like it was built, um because if you look at history, like, right, then
Hmm.
we should be one of the most advanced species, kind of, in the theory at least.
Are you talking
But if
about
you look at
amongst?
these pyramids,
Are you talking about that humans should be the most advanced species in on Earth or galactically?
no, just on earth,
Oh well,
of how entitled we feel we are.
I mean, that comes down to a lot of questions about the animal mental capacity and human comparative mental capacity and
Hmm.
what we value as advanced. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I understand that, but the reasoning being, like, many experts forever thought like this could not be achieved without using most advanced technologies, because the kind of work that even a pyramid has gone through, like in terms of being accurate and always being on the equator line throughout the world.
Well, but like I get how that could be phenomenal, but there's a Greek mathematician. I forget his name. It starts with a P. Um, Basically, he used the shadows of many of the ancient great wonders. He measured the shadows and he measured the curvature of the shadows, and he did this in multiple locations. And this individual, depending on how big a stadium is, was anywhere from 300 feet off to like 300 miles off of the 300 miles off, yeah, 300 miles off of the Earth's circumference, right? Sorry, yeah, circumference, right? So this individual, right, using shadows and using mathematical principles, was able to get really freaking close on the size of the Earth, right? I think
Hmm.
there's this tendency to look at ancient individuals as stupid rather than look at ancient individuals as being one less numerous, so there weren't as many intelligent individuals to collaborate. And two, as stupid, instead of being individuals with access to less, resources or prior knowledge to work from. One of the benefits, we have as a species is knowledge sharing. This is something that octopus do not have, for example, and this is one thing that detriments that species very much, is that they're not able to knowledge share. But with people,
Are you
they're
sure
able.
about that?
Yeah, we're sure about that. They're very solitary animals. Like dolphins, uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and other porpoises can go about knowledge sharing. Elephants can.
Mm-hmm.
Octopi cannot. But they're very
Mm-hmm.
intelligent individuals. They can use tools, and they're smarter than the vast majority of species on the planet. But
Mm-hmm.
just due to the way they live and exist, they don't really have that knowledge sharing. They have to start fresh, kind of every time. Um, People, we have that, so and it's very obviously so we're able to build off of one another. So but nonetheless, I mean, there's still tons of ancient individuals who, if they had, the access to the amount of knowledge and data that Einstein had, they could have come up with a very, brilliant theories if they existed at the same time as Einstein. They just so happened to be born at a different time period with less
You
access to
you just
resources.
brought up a very interesting theory by
Hmm.
accident. That is this. It's called as time and knowledge displacement,
Hmm.
where you put a particular person from another timeline to this timeline,
Hmm.
and I don't know who was that, who again and again proved that uh, if you put a person in the wrong timeline,
Hmm.
where they had like far more access to knowledge,
Hmm.
they could not do anything.
Well,
Like they
no.
would not be better than the average person, not even the most intelligent.
Well, no, I think, see, this is a point where I disagree. So I get from if they were suddenly dropped, right? If you just took the
Hmm.
guy as a fully formed adult and you dropped him
No,
in,
no, it's
no, of
just,
course not.
it's, let's say you gave Google to Newton,
No, 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 no. That's not,
like
no,
as
no,
as a human
that's not what
being.
I'm saying. No, that's not what I'm
Hmm.
arguing, because that makes no sense. Obviously not. Of course, they wouldn't have the background, the context, the phenomenological experience. What I'm saying more so, let's say we're able to take a baby, right? Like just a baby from that time, right? And we just for somehow knew that that baby was going to be the designer of the Great Pyramids of Giza, right? And we were able to transport that infant into the modern day and give them that sort of background. Like, of course, they would have the intelligence, the ability, the know-how to figure these things out. But that is not the resources or the phenomenological experience that that person worked with. Clearly, there's a very intelligent person in there, and clearly they formed to be a very intelligent person and picked up the mathematical principles of that they had access to, and picked up, the astrological principles, the engineering principles, so on and so forth. So that's more so what I'm saying. No, if you gave the designer of the Great Pyramid of Giza Facebook, he wouldn't know what to do with it. Of course not. No way. Newton, you get
Anthony, come on, he could have found a couple of dates there.
he would have gotten some cheap furniture on Facebook Marketplace. He's like, oh, this is how we
Yeah.
furnish the Great Pyramid.
Yeah, this is how we take used furniture, and we say, um let's just use it.
Yeah, we pick up we talk to Joe from Tulsa, and we get his Humvee out
Yeah.
here to drag a few stones. But
Yeah,
yeah.
that's because there are temples in India which, like, today's architects really struggle to explain how it was built.
Mhm.
And I find it really funny because all of this study that architects do, yet they cannot build a building that can stand for like freaking 50 years too. And let's say, in air quotes, right, less educated people
Yes.
were able to build monuments that have lasted a fucking millennia and still are going strong.
Yeah.
And that's like the kind of sad reality of today.
Well, there's also, I think also that comes down to like a carefulness too, right? Like, where a lot of these monuments were meant. I mean, if we look at the majority of like ancient structures, like obviously they've collapsed, and for good reason, because they were built quickly and done for just like, certain purposes. But in the same sort of way, like when you build a building with care, it will last. I mean, while
Hmm.
not nearly, as old, right? But just as, monumental, right? Like, the Empire State Building, one of the oldest skyscrapers, is still in fabulous condition, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when you build something with care, it will last longer. And obviously, these ancient monuments that still stand, for the most part, are monuments of immense importance to individuals at the time, and that they want
Yeah.
to last. So it still works the same way. Whereas opposed to someone building a just a condominium on South Beach and not accounting for like the flood waters or like how salt does
Mm-hmm.
damage to foundations, like yeah, then you
Yeah.
end up with tragic results. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it is yeah, it is one of those things where it really is disappointing to say the least.
Yeah. I read this somewhere, and of course I'll offend a lot of Christians. Uh, they said that even till today you could walk the same street that Jesus of Nazareth walked,
Mm-hmm.
but you cannot walk on the street that Jesus of New Jersey walked on.
Oh, that's good. I like that. I like that.
You
Yeah,
know.
if you want to get the acento down, Jesus, can you? Yeah, with the
Yeah, yeah, that would be even more.
Jesus. Yeah, yeah,
That would be even more on your
yeah.
face kind of thing.
Yeah. That's I mean that's one of the things. It's funny, like Spanish, and I myself in Cuban in background is so prominent in the United States, and you go to most parts of the world, and I could get a lot of people looking at me sideways if I was walking down, let's say, the streets of Chennai, asking people questions in
Hmm.
Spanish. They would
Yeah.
be like, "What gibberish is this? What's happening here?" Like, "Hola,
Yes.
señor, tengo comida." It's like,
They'd be like, you lost me on the first word.
yeah. I mean, it's not surprising, obviously. I mean, with the obviously with the sheer number of and regionally important
Hmm.
dialects, and especially India, but just so many places on earth. But it's so I mean that's one of those things that's very fascinating. When you look at like linguistic shifts, right? Because currently
Yeah.
globally the big shift is like English is the lingua franca, and
Hmm.
just English is just becoming the globally dominant language, especially
It's
with
already there, I think.
yeah. It's the most
Like a.
spoken secondary language, and I want to say the fifth most primary language.
Hmm. And
Um,
which is the most spoken, like Chinese Mandarin?
no, I think English is more spoken, and when you combined all the speakers, I think English is the most spoken language in the world, followed
Yes.
by Mandarin, and then I want to
Hmm.
say followed by Hindi, and then followed by
Hmm.
Spanish, I want to say.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
I mean, you just look at colonial history, you will figure it out.
yeah, French after that or something. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, but
Who had more land?
somehow the people with the sad rock, the
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
sad the sad rock for an island.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. Like that is the thing that really impresses me, because have you heard of Falklands?
yeah, of course.
Yeah, like how the fuck did people end there, right? And it must have been a mistake. Like, by mistake they just wandered there.
And they're like, yeah, I guess we'll live here. Like
Yeah,
guess we can't. Guess we're not going to Argentina, which is a couple feet away. I guess we're just gonna hang out
yeah.
here.
Yeah. I think it was an introvert who said like, I hate freaking people,
It's
so I
I
want to stay as far as away from them.
yeah, I'm done with
So it
people.
was like, yeah. I mean, it's very famous because you remember that moment where British and Spanish people met on the same island,
Yes.
and they thought like, okay, we have discovered this island.
This is our island, mine.
Yeah, this is our island, and they're like, how the fuck are you here?
There's a lot of that.
Yeah,
A lot of that happens sometimes where it's like people thought they
hmm,
were the first. Like
yeah.
like I
United States being the biggest thing, right? The North American continent.
wait, what are you talking about?
Like, people discovering it again and again and calling
Oh,
it as
right,
new.
like the Vikings, and yeah, like
Yeah.
obviously if we go way back, Neolithic individuals, and
Hmm.
well, they just pushed the date thanks to a find and at White Sands of human habitation, right? Like the given I'm not sure if you ever got the whole thing of like, obviously, I'm thinking very America centrically, but I'm not sure if they ever talked about this, like the land bridge where people got from,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
So thanks to some finds at White Sands and other finds in addition, the theory now is that people came to the Americas way before that sort of land bridge, and that the land bridge was a
Mm-hmm.
large and new migration movement, but wasn't the
Yeah.
original
Mm-hmm.
movement of people into the Americas.
Yeah, I think back then Trump was in power, where he said build the damn wall.
Oh, and
And
he wants to make sure that there was no more ice bridge between Eurasia and the Americas.
yeah,
The
so
ice.
and band of Asian people just crossed over
Oh, oh no, oh no,
opposing that.
oh no, oh no, oh no, 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 I'm not. We're not going there.
Yeah, I can go there, dude,
You
because
could
I'm
go there.
Asian.
I'm not going there. I'm good here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really like towing boundaries for some reason.
It's
I'm
fine.
just
No,
adventurous in
knock
that way.
yourself out.
Yeah.
That's this is not my place to speak on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I feel like like in today's society, everybody thinks that they're so sophisticated. Oh my god, I dress good, like I need to
I don't
speak
dress good.
a very
Yeah, you're
uh
speaking to the wrong crowd here. I'm in a paddleboard.
yeah, same
In a
here. I mean,
paddleboard shirt.
but just in general, people are like, like I need to be sophisticated because somehow I don't know who the fuck came up with this, but somehow being sophisticated is like a sign of intelligence
Hmm.
that I fucking truly do not understand. Because if you look at like most of the scientists throughout the history of the world, they were not really like sophisticated people by any means, right? And they were more on the wild scale rather than sophisticated.
Maybe.
And because of this sophistication, there is this breakdown of conversations in the society. Because if you look at South Africa, right, they went through like a lot of shit before Mandela came in.
Hmm.
And even till today there is that, like a black person will talk to white person in a very offensive manner, like because it's just a history, right? And they
Right.
acknowledge, okay, like um because I know two people from South Africa who are white and black.
Mm.
And anytime the black guy says anything offensive, the white guy will say, no, I can take you, right?
Oh
And
God.
that's kind of acknowledgement to the history rather than saying, okay, you know what, like we are not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like that topic is off the bench.
Yeah.
And I feel that once that happens, that's like really showing you like there is a clear line between people.
Hmm.
um yeah, because if you look at like today's United States society, right, if people just talked about everything, most of the problem would not exist.
Yeah, I know there's larger systemic issues with stuff. I mean, yes,
Oh
conversation will
yeah,
do a
that's there.
lot, of course,
But
to
just people,
yield things,
yeah,
but
but like we need to find that line between government and society,
right, but
like
governments are made up
laws
of
and
individuals.
behavior.
So I get what you're saying. Yes, I think a lot, but like, yeah, individuals just talking, I think, is the issue, right? Like, it comes to
Hmm.
individuals. Again,
Yeah.
individuals make up systems, and then individuals come together to fix systems.
Yeah.
Um,
What I meant to say is like, like how laws are different than behavior.
mhm.
Like I could call someone an asshole, but that's not necessarily illegal, right?
Right.
So it's like that behavior has changed. And only I think the only way that can change is just through conversations, like having these tough conversations with people and saying, okay, this is messed up, what can we do better, rather than suppressing that
Yeah.
kind of conversation.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, but yeah, I think speaking of which, I think we've run our hour, right?
Yes, kind of, but it's okay.
Yeah, awesome. No, no, all good, all good. But yeah, yeah, I want speaking of which, I want to thank you for a good conversation. This was a lot more humorous
Hmm.
and jokey than I expected. I originally
Yes.
intended we are going to talk about absurdism and death and love, and what did we end up talking about? Internet policies and Tulsa
Yeah.
truck drivers.
Yes.
But yeah, thank you for all
Yeah.
your patience with me. I
Hmm.
have to say I wasn't a perfect guest in regards to scheduling or timing and stuff.
That's
I'm a
totally fine.
fumbling dude, but this was a super
um
nice conversation, my guy.
yeah, that's totally fine. And yeah, because that's what we do on in Sapient. Like we just find the craziest conversations to have
Yeah,
because everybody is having normal conversations.
of course. No, no, all good. And I think sapiens, if we couldn't have weird conversations, what would be the point of having conversations in the first place?
Exactly, that's why I named it sapient.
Perfecto. Yeah, it gives this
So,
illustrious air
mhm.
to it, which I, you know,
Yeah.
and who needs all of that? Who needs all that jazz in the first place? I'm too much of a self-serious academic, anyways. But yeah, thank you so
Yeah.
much for your time. Uh,
Thank you so much for
you
being
mind if
on the show.
you mind if I plug myself? Be all
Oh
pluggy.
yeah, go
Yeah,
for it. Go for it
yeah.
completely.
You can get my books on Amazon. My author name is my full name, Anthony David Vernon. Uh, the Assumption of Death and Flings on Flings are stuff I've written. So if you're like, hey, that guy is serious but also cool, yeah.
Yeah. And what a great name you have.
It's three first names. I like to joke. It's
Yes,
three
like
first names.
I don't know. I don't know. I think your parents are very cool. They were like, like this boy is going to be successful.
I
We
was
we better give him a good name.
I was so close. I actually think I could have ended up with a much better name. So
Mm,
my mom wanted to name me Antonio,
mm,
but my dad just wouldn't vibe with that. So
mm,
I could have been, and then I could have, with my mother's name, I could have been Antonio David Valdez Hurtado. Like that would have
mm.
also been really good. But I like my name a
Yes.
lot too. So no matter what,
Yeah.
good names.
Yeah, I don't think you can complain about your name. You don't have that privilege yet.
Exactly.
Yeah, but Anthony, thank you very much for being on the show.
Of course. Thank you for
Um,
having me.
you know, so to my audience, his Amazon storefront will be in the website description or even on the Spotify description. Just click on it, just go there. Because what we have talked to in here, he seems like a person who has some brain, like a lot of brain, I think. And of course a character. So I hope you are able to get some value out of it. And until next episode, take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.